Cyclone warning for Derby, Western Australia on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for March 28th. Well, there's certainly been a tropical weather bulletin hiatus over the last few weeks, but truth be told, very little has actually happened, although a cyclone warning is now in effect for part of Western Australia in anticipation of a new storm that's forming. We've already designated it and used our code G3, although the officials haven't given it a name yet. In the Atlantic, it's 66 days until hurricane season begins, and there's no areas of interest, of which we're very pleased. There is a fair bit of weather going on there, though, some thunderstorms over southeastern Texas. In the Eastern Pacific, things are also rather quiet as well. 49 days until hurricane season. Those numbers are ticking down so quickly. Before you know it, it will be here. Apart from that massive low pressure system off the Pacific Northwest yesterday, it's been a fairly quiet last little minute there in the Eastern Pacific. In the Westpac, it's also quiet. There was a brief 10% invest that we had a couple of days ago. A few thunderstorms there off the Philippines at this point, off the eastern coast, but it's quite a quiet basin once more. In the North Indian Ocean, there is a little bit of activity there in the intertropical convergence zone at the lower latitudes southeast of Sri Lanka. But in general, across India and across most of those populated areas, it's still very dry and quiet, as you'd expect at this time of year. In the southwest Indian Ocean, of course, it's been busy, but at the moment it is actually very quiet. Just a couple of storms to talk about there, thunderstorms that is, off northern Madagascar and towards the Comoro Islands as well. And in the Australian region, Courtney is still there as well, actually near its peak at this point, category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, 100 miles per hour sustained winds, 160 kilometers per hour, and that new storm that we've tagged G3 there, heading towards this region of Australia that we're going to be looking at right now. It is currently 80 kilometers from Browse Island. Cyclone warning, by the way, from Troughton Island there to Beagle Bay, including Derby, of course. 326 kilometers from Argeloon towards the northwest of Derby, 424 from the city itself, 503 from Broome, and 583 from Wyndham, right way up towards the northeast. So this storm starting to gain some strength, 45 mile per hour winds depicted by scatterometers, and it is heading towards the coast. So let's take a look at satellite imagery of both of these systems in the Australian region. Of course, Courtney will eventually be moving into the southwest Indian Ocean beyond 90 degrees east, but at the minute still in the AU region. Here is a close-up of it right now. Certainly not the largest storm that we've ever seen, and right now it is struggling looking at this imagery. Sea surface temperatures are starting to get a bit more marginal now, and it is really having difficulty there in the face of what looks like very high wind shear. It's throwing up some really high cloud tops near the center of it, but it is extremely lopsided with all of that convection mainly to the north. Some of it's still very high, but the southern side looking pretty poor, and its eye structure really non-existent anymore. And here is the other tropical storm that we've designated. You may just be able to see the center of circulation underneath those new clouds that have just blown up the convective tops. Obviously not very nice looking, it has to be said. Disorganized system here, and that's possibly why they haven't gone with the storm designation yet. But we expect that it will get named fairly soon, possibly even by the time of this broadcast. But here's some radar imagery showing that rainfall is already occurring all along that coastal region. Well, looking elsewhere around the world, off the US East Coast, big line of cloud way out over the Atlantic, just cleared Bermuda. Apart from that, pretty quiet, except for in Texas, where we do have some severe thunderstorms right now, and indeed I believe there was a flash flood emergency recently there, so serious conditions in a few locations. And this is the Pacific Northwest system that we were watching and made a short about yesterday. Was very deep. It's now much shallower and weaker even though it still looks quite decent. Here's the Eastern Pacific. You can see that sun glint there on the southwestern side of the image. That really shows how calm those waters are down there, reflecting the sunlight. And this is the Western Pacific. A closer view of the Philippines there, with those few storms moving in from the ocean over Samar mainly and towards Catanduanes. The Bay of Bengal in the North Indian Ocean, showing you a few areas of cloud and rain, maybe one or two storms. Southwest Indian Ocean, usual pattern really, a front moving through South Africa, and general monsoonal showers further north. And this is the wider Australian region, showing everything else that's going on. More rainfall towards Queensland as well, which we'll be looking at on the models in a little while, along with those two storms. Well, sea surface temperatures slowly creeping up as they do at this time of year now in the Northern Hemisphere. Here's a look at the Atlantic. 26 degrees Celsius, pretty much engulfing Cuba now, and just off the coast of the Florida Keys too, a little spot of 26. In the Western Pacific, also looking pretty good, with those warm waters stretching up towards Taiwan now as well. All around the Philippines looking good as usual. Southwest Indian Ocean, the hot spots there around the northern part of Madagascar, off towards the northeast. Temperatures up towards 29 or 30 degrees Celsius, quite commonplace actually. Mauritius and Reunion still looking good too. Western coast of Australia has always been the hottest property, with temperatures still pushing close to 32 degrees Celsius. Not quite at their zenith now, but still very good water temperatures indeed. Although for Courtney, it is riding along the edge of that cool rim towards the west there now. Well, compared to average, blue areas there are below average compared to normal, and the oranges are above average. One or two key spots in the Indian Ocean now below average because of recent activity, but mainly it is still above in a lot of spots that matter. Also looking towards the Galapagos Islands there, signs of possibly an incoming El Nino maybe, still warmer than usual. OHC graphics, looks like they've had a little bit of a facelift, especially at the lower end of the scale on these graphics, so still looking quite good in the Western Pacific, and even one or two spots in the East Pac there as well. Some recent seasons really didn't have very much there at all until peak season, so very much ahead in terms of this energy amount. Off Australia's east coast, still a few spots there as well, looking decent in the Coral Sea, but the main hot regions, or the energetic regions there, off towards the northeast of Vanuatu and Fiji, realistically, when we're looking at potential cyclone development. Well, this is the GFS computer model then up to the 5-day period, which really tells us everything we need to know about these two storms' futures. Obviously, Courtney there starting a long recurve eventually, maybe even getting a bit stronger, but I somewhat doubt that now. And then of course we've got the new storm, pretty straightforward track into land there near Derby, and then continuing inland southeasterly, well inland in the end. And dropping rain over a large part of the Great Desert region. Whilst we've got nothing else to look at around the world, we'll just show you this little area near New Caledonia. Tries to get a spin on it there towards the end of that 5-day period, but realistically not a chance for that system if it even becomes discernible as a system. But just something else to look at whilst we have absolutely nothing else in the next 5 days across the tropics. So let's take a look at rainfall expectations for the whole northern half of Australia basically here. You're going to notice two distinct rainfall patterns. Obviously the main line there swathed from this new tropical storm, a little bit of concentrated rainfall near the coast, but in general not a particularly wet storm. It increases inland a little bit as well towards 7 inches, which is nearly 200 millimeters. And then looking towards Queensland, look at that, that's not to do with any of these tropical storms, but there is elevated rainfall patterns inland there for quite a while, with up to 250 millimeters of rainfall on offer. Well, in the longer range, day 5 to 10, we're actually looking at the North Indian Ocean, because there is a little system that tries to form there. There it is, going through the Andaman Islands and then starting to move further north through the Bay of Bengal. Just how far can it get at this time of year? It would be still pretty unusual so early in the year to have a storm, but it can happen, and sometimes it does. Pretty weak, and obviously getting into the longer range there towards the end, but that is a tropical storm. Elsewhere, we have nothing else to look at really, so we're just going to watch the depressing remnants of Courtney there drift southwards and then get swallowed up by another much larger extratropical system and get shunted towards the east, as they always do, way south of the southwestern part of the Australian continent. So there it is again, what's left of Courtney already turned post-tropical, and then it gets sideswiped by this much larger system, and concentrating forces becoming a little bit more powerful towards the end there as well. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all of our items, as well as our full season and individual animations on request. And we've got nothing really else to show you at this point, so it's just a placeholder here for Force 13's outlets. You can find our link tree there, which will link to you all of the places that we are active. Well, in the Scilly range, this storm does continue. Does it make it all the way to the Ganges River Delta? Well, pretty much. It does make it to the coast of Bangladesh just about in the end, and eventually towards West Bengal, India, barely holding on by that point. So it would be a very interesting turn up for the books, this. A very early season system, but certainly not out of the realms of possibility, although it really does exhaust most of its energy by the time it actually gets there. And also in the very long range, of course, this is day 10 to 16, so not much faith in this yet, but there is another significant tropical cyclone hitting that sweet spot in the Western Australian region. There it is, continuing southwestwards. It feels like we've had so many in this area this season, it has to be said, but the opportunity is there. The conditions are very, very ripe. You know, some of the best conditions we've seen in this region. There's another one potentially in early to mid-April. Doesn't hit land. Well, on this day, it was a much different beast that we were watching, and who remembers it? It was Cyclone Debbie. 8 years ago today, would you believe, March 28th, 2017, the landfall of Cyclone Debbie, Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale after a brief Category 4 peak. We also had Tropical Depression Caleb looking sorry for itself after briefly peaking as a tropical storm in that Western Australian region. Of course, Debbie stole the show and, of course, moved inland over Queensland after that. We did live coverage on this storm and many storm updates you can check out in our archive. Well, back to today then, and of course in the Atlantic this year we will begin with Andrea, in the Eastern Pacific Alvin, and in the Central Pacific the next name is Iona. 22 storms so far this year. Doesn't sound like a massive amount, but it is quite a bit better than a lot of other seasons up to now, previously, last 5 to 6 years. Western Pacific's next name is Wutip. North Indian Ocean, it will be Shakti. Of course, in the Southern Hemisphere, we've got Courtney. Obviously, we are expecting the next Australian name shortly, which will be Diane. The Southwest Indian Ocean's next name is Kanto, and in the South Pacific, it will be Tam. That's all from the Night's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll see you again sometime soon.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.